Good morning, and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck and Becky Peterson, the Beck and Beck team at Windermere Real Estate. Beck and Beck provide complete service for your real estate transaction and bring you guests who provide interesting information about products and services available in our community. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk KGVO. Welcome aboard. So glad you are with us, just like we are every week on Missoula Real Estate Today. One of our sponsors joins us, Diane Beck from Windermere Real Estate. Welcome back to your show, my friend.
Well, thank you, Danny. Glad to be here. The interest rates kind of tapering down a little bit, which is going to really, I think, generate our fall market. And I think things are going to look up for buyers and sellers this fall. And I'm just excited I'm excited for football. I'm not excited to close up the lake place, but you got to do what you got to do. You got to roll with the seasons.
Man, if the football team played at your lake place, you'd have it.
Yeah,
made.
That's great.
What does it take in terms of the numbers? I mean, even just if the interest rate drops just a little teeny tiny bit, let's say, is that a motivating factor? Have you noticed?
It really is.
Wow.
I personally believe there are a lot of buyers out there right now just watching interest rates, because every 1/8%, 1/4%, 0.5%, every little bit counts towards what their payment's going to be. And so I had this conversation just this last week with another couple brokers about how I still believe there's a pent-up demand of buyers out there that couldn't buy during the crazy over asking price, multiple offer world that we came through here during, post-COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. And so I think there's a lot of buyers out there watching interest rates, which is great.
What is your overview of the Missoula housing market to this point? I know the last time you were on, it wasn't terribly long ago, but probably long enough to maybe observe a change or two. But we've passed the mid-August point. Your view of the housing market, your take on things to this point?
I think it is really shifting a lot, more than we even know at this point in time. We are seeing, finally, we are seeing more inventory, and the more homes that hit the market, the more sellers that are out there that raise their hand and say, I'm ready to sell my home, gives more opportunities to those buyers. So that's why I'm really optimistic about this fall, because I do believe that there's a lot of people out there that, have kind of just sat back and watched the market, sellers and buyers. Buyers are watching interest rates, sellers are watching prices. I do believe, though, we're seeing more inventory. I don't know, we'll have to talk to Brent about exactly what those numbers are year over year.
Yes, yeah.
But we just know there's more homes for sale. If you drive down Stevens Avenue, there's a house on every block almost between, say, Mount and Sacagawea Park. So It's pretty interesting to see all the signs go up, and it's great opportunities for those buyers out there, and it shows me that there's still sellers out there. They're putting their places on the market.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck and Becky Peterson, the Beck and Beck team at Windermere Real Estate here on News Talk KGVO. And my guest is Diane Beck from Windermere Real Estate. I know that we did talk to Becky Peterson a while back. We also talked to Brent Wahlberg earlier in the year. And more inventory is great. I would imagine, and I don't think correctly so, but I imagine the perception is, well, that means that prices are probably coming down with more inventory.
So
demand and supply.
That's supply and demand right there. I do see some price adjustments.
Okay.
We're definitely seeing price adjustments. Our sense of the market, and again, talking to other brokers, not just in my office, but across the state, we just don't believe we're going to experience this big dip in prices. So for those buyers out there that are watching interest rates come down a little bit, just be ready, because I don't believe we're going to see a huge dip in prices. Yeah. But you never know. The election this fall, the economy in general, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, real estate's is a moving target all the time, and we never know what's going to actually happen. We have no control over. There's so much we have no control over, and it's kind of just wait and see at this point. But prices are high, and I mean prices are high because of the lack of supply that we had in the last 5 years. And so for every home that came for sale, we had 10, 11 buyers wanting to buy, and they're bidding multiple offers against each other, and in some people's eyes it goes to the highest bidder, which is sad, but that's what was going on.
Yeah, and it wasn't, that many years ago that you and I were talking on this show where you kind of felt like, in terms of a prospective buyer, that there was that $300,000 threshold of pain, right? And in just a very short time, that is such a long gone, distant memory. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. 300 to 400 is, maybe a townhouse or a condo. Here's an example. I had in our office meeting here last week, one of our agents had a pitch for a buyer coming in, I believe from Alaska, if I remember correctly, and he pitched he needed a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, decent sized lot, 30 minutes within Missoula, under 500, and everybody just went, well, that's not probably going to be very realistic. You're going to have to probably raise that price a little bit if you want something, of a decent size and decent condition. And so that's the reality check. I mean, I hate to say entry level is close to 500,000 at this point if you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on a, double car garage on a decent sized lot. So it is what it is. I don't see those the homes in that category changing a whole lot. Where we're seeing price adjustments is more in the higher end, the million plus. We're starting to see a lot of price adjustments, which need to happen. But if something hits the market, it's priced right and fair and good condition and a good location, it'll sell. And so we're working with that shifting and adjustments now. Trying to price a house right now is almost impossible in that the prices have just, we come through this craziness and some were overinflated and some weren't. And so trying to put a realistic price on a house right now is a little bit of a challenge.
Can I ask you about that? Maybe give us the radio tour of when you are trying to figure out a price. I mean, you've got a seller, a client, and they have a number in mind, but I don't know that I've really asked you about all the intricate details that some of them are obvious, of course, but all the intricate details that help you as a realtor try to manage the expectations of that buyer.
The seller, the seller.
Excuse me, the seller.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the conversation that we start with is simply talking about, what their expectations are. And, they may have a number in mind, which a lot of sellers already do.
Of course.
And that's great. But what I have to do is take a tour of the home, and then go back and look at the data from the multiple listing service and see what has actually sold and closed, not just active listings and not just pending or under contract listings, but sold and closed. I'm going to look at it just like an appraiser would look at it. From when the bank does the financing, they send the appraiser out there and they have a book with all the details in it.
Yeah.
And they are looking at comparables. They look at them a lot closer than we do. We look at, generally speaking, location, condition, size, amenities, so we have an overview of what we look at, but we want to price them as an appraiser would, because the last thing we want to have happen.
Great point.
What we don't want to have happen is get 3 weeks into the transaction and the appraiser says, well, in my opinion, it's not worth this. And then we've got to either renegotiate the price or put the house back on the market.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck and Becky Peterson, the Beck and Beck team at Windermere Real Estate here on News Talk KGVO. Always nice to have my buddy Diane Beck, our sponsor and our guest this week on the show. And I don't know if this will ever change, Diane. I think it would take something drastic. But Missoula, and then the Missoula area, it appears to be a little bit insulated because it is a high demand location. I guess we just kind of expect to see, rightfully so, because we're pretty proud of the place, but we just kind of expect to see maybe higher than average prices, which I guess, again, using your example of a prospective client from Alaska, there's going to be sticker shock.
There is sticker shock, and we've had this conversation for 20 plus years. Basically, people want to live here. They want to live where they can walk out there, get in their car and drive 5 minutes and be at the river and throw their fishing rod in, or throw their boat in, or float. I mean, people want to live here, and that's a fact. And the University of Montana, the healthcare system we have, 8 hours to Seattle, and pretty decent flights these days. Good air traffic out coming in and out of Missoula, even though it's pretty expensive. But people want to live here, so I don't. That hasn't changed in the last 20 years. I don't see it changing in the next 20. And it is people will pay to live here. And I cannot tell you how many times in the last 10 years people come here from all over the country, all over the world, in fact, and they are really surprised at how high our prices are in Montana. I think people believe they're going to just roll in and pick up a nice 5-acre, little ranchette for $500,000. Well, that doesn't happen.
That Montana dream. Right?
That Montana dream with a creek and a pond and you got it all. I mean, I've heard it all, Denny. I've definitely heard it all.
Yeah. Norman Rockwell paintings. That's pretty amazing. I'm amazed sometimes that there's any traffic at all in Missoula when I look at the airport or look at the parking lot at the Missoula airport.
Right.
My goodness, what a crazy place.
I know.
And you fly a fair amount, now and then, and you probably have to experience
mostly
that.
Mostly, spring and fall through the winter. But, I when I head to the lake, I go by the airport every time, and it's packed out there.
Yeah,
and I look at it and go, where are all these people going, or where are they coming from? And so, Missoula is a popular place. And again, I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah. And with a little more property on the market now, do you see any change here? Are there still a lot of people that maybe would like to sell their home for whatever reason? They want to downsize, or they're an empty nester, whatever. They don't want to relocate, but there's still that, that fear that they won't find what they'd like to move into, downsizing, just because of the prices. You might have a different interest rate than you had, things like that. So I imagine there's still that level of reluctance. I know we've talked about that a lot over the years.
We have, and I mean, I think that scenario is very prevalent right now, because I believe there are a lot of people that want to either upscale or downsize, either one. And they might be in an interest rate of 2 or 3% interest, and they cannot justify, even though they'll make really good money selling their home.
Yeah.
They cannot justify, looking at a higher interest rate mortgage. So I believe right now that's what's holding some sellers back is whatever interest rate they're locked into. And then that's a dynamic we'll be dealing with, I think, for quite a while. I mean, look at how long interest rates were: 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. It's like, I don't know that we'll see that again, but I didn't think they would stay that low that long. And I mean, I can recall how many shows that I kept saying interest rates have got to go up, and they just stayed historically low for a really long time. And I don't believe we're going to see anything below 5 anytime soon.
No, and it wasn't just that low number. To your point, it was the longevity of that low number.
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of folks out there, myself included, that have 2 and 3% interest loans. So, you might make good money selling your home, but nobody wants to pay 6 or 7 or 8% right now. And so it's kind of that mind over matter, but if they make enough on their house, and they have enough equity in it, they can just pay cash for something else.
Sure.
But that's the dilemma of, will they find what they're looking for?
Yeah.
And why would I put this on the market if I don't already have a place to go? So that's a conversation I've had with a few sellers, especially this year. and so it's very fresh in my mind, and so I know I kind of understand that dynamic. I feel their pain, but at some point you have to pull the trigger and just move on. And people that say, well, someday when I retire or someday when I do this, just at some point you have to pull the trigger and just do it, and do. It might be a little painful, but just do it.
Sure. Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck and Becky Peterson, the Beck and Beck team at Windermere Real Estate. Here on News Talk KGVO, my guest is Diane Beck from Windermere. Also, thanks to a couple of their marketing partners that help bring you the program. Miles Link at Opportunity Bank of Montana and Rob Fleming with Man Mortgage. And back to Diane Beck. Mentioned earlier in the show, I think Miles is scheduled next week, but I'm sure that we will talk about this, but I'll talk to you about it too. I know more, it has just become so important and actually, required in a lot of ways. You've just got to get those pre-qualification ducks in a row before you really can move forward on trying to obtain a house.
Absolutely. That has not changed.
Nope.
And especially in a market that we're in right now with, the moving target of interest rate and the moving target of inventory. Any buyer out there right now that's thinking about buying in the next 6 months, they want or need to get pre-approved. And they don't necessarily need to, give your social security number and have your credit pulled, but have a general conversation with a lender about what you qualify for and what that payment's going to look like, and what it's going to cost you to get that loan. And I believe, and this is a Miles question for next week, I believe once you're pre-approved, you have 6 months. That
Yes.
Pre-approval is good for 6 months, and I don't think that's changed. But so that's a great question for Miles next week. But I think that has not changed. If a buyer is not competitive in the market unless they're pre-approved. And so if you're serious, and there's, again, I said it earlier, there's a lot of buyers out there that really want to buy. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you, get yourself pre-approved and watch the market the next 6 months between inventory and interest rates. I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunities.
I think, too, that 6 month period is not unreasonable. It immediately alleviates a lot of your stress. It gives you maybe a little more flexibility or maybe a little more motivation to try to purchase a home. And, okay, so 6 months comes to an end. I don't think it's a real, again, that's probably a question for Miles. I don't think it's a real complicated process to extend that, is it?
No, I believe I believe that is related to the credit report, the longevity of the credit report per se, and you never know in 6 months what might change, employment or debt. This is another message to buyers out there. Once you get pre-approved, don't go out and buy a brand new car afterwards.
Yes.
Don't go add to your credit, because that will your credit and your employment will be verified prior to closing, and if there are changes to it, you may not qualify. And that's people are so funny. They're like, well, I just got pre-approved and I got 6 months, but I want to buy something now. Well, I've had it happen. They go out now. They feel like they can go out and buy a new car or a new camper or a new boat. And it's like, folks, if you're going to buy a house, keep your credit clean and keep your debt low. And once you're pre-approved, don't make a whole lot of changes to it.
Yeah. You brought this up briefly earlier in the show. How effective of a tool you are a local realtor and man, go local, folks. But how effective, even more effective of a tool has that multiple listing service been for you? Maybe you can explain a little bit about that for those who don't know.
Sure. So our multiple listing service is very robust and it's very buyer friendly. Once we have a buyer that is pre-approved and looking for something specific, we can enter all of their information into our system and they will receive listings automatically. It's the coolest thing. You could wake up in the middle of the night and see a new listing. It's is very much real time. I get notified every time something gets sent to one of my clients so I can see what they're looking at. And so when I get that phone call that, we woke up this morning to this new listing, we want to go look at it, I've already got it on my email. And so I'm a creature of habit, but when we switched multiple listing services here a couple years ago, I've embraced it, and it's very buyer friendly. It's very good. Information's accurate. It's as accurate as the listing agent puts into the system, but it's real time. It's not like Zillow. It's not Trulia. It's not Realtor.com. It's the MLS. Yes. And it's the actual listing data. It's got all the plat maps and the covenants and the utilities, and anything you want to know about that property should be in. When you get that link at 10 o'clock at night or at 2 in the morning, that all that information should be in there. And so it's super buyer friendly. So for buyers who are, serious about looking, they need to find themselves a buyer representative. There's some new documentation out there that we can talk about at a later time, but the buyers have an opportunity to be, real time looking at new houses.
Are there any benefits to the MLS in terms of being a seller?
I would say that. I mean, it's just like going to Costco, right? If you're selling a product and it's on the shelf, that's where you're going to see it. So it's very similar. If you're a seller and you are listed in the MLS, you have an audience that you would not have if you were for sale by owner, there are some properties that are not required to be in the MLS, like some commercial properties and maybe, ranch properties. But I would say 95% of what's for sale in Missoula, Montana is on the MLS. That there might be a 5% for sale by owner ratio out there, but it's your audience. Where are you going to find... How are you going to sell your home? How are you going to sell your product? You got to put it on the multiple listing service, because that's where the buyers are going to find it.
Any recent housing development projects in the work that have kind of got you fired up as you look down the road?
There was a little announcement last week about 480 houses getting approved out by Frenchtown.
Oh, there's a little one.
There's one. I know the area out by the Y is exploding with new construction. Mullen Road. So, I mean, there are lots of projects going on. And it was interesting. I was surprised to see that 480 houses got approved so quickly from the county commissioners. That doesn't seem to be Missoula's trend. I'm not sure how long that developer was working on that project,
right.
But we need housing, and maybe finally our powers that be in city and county government have gotten that message. And if it's a good project and it's in the right place and it's going to serve a need, then let's get it approved in a year or two instead of 5 to 10 like it took for a while. So. Not to get political, but
I get that.
We are in a housing. We have been in a housing crisis because of how long it was taking to get projects approved for a long time.
Yes.
And I'm talking pre-COVID. I'm talking early 2000s. And I could get into some dates and times and places, but I won't. But yeah, so there's lots going on out there. I get a lot of people. Oh, did you hear about the? Yes, I read all the headlines, and so it's nice to see. It's nice to see the development. Everybody might not agree with that, but that's a factor, and it's a reality of where we live. And we have some. Look at Miller Creek. I mean, if you haven't driven up Miller Creek in the last 2 years, you better go on up over the hill, because there's a lot of new homes up there, and that's where the land is, and that's where the availability of new houses are.
Yeah, and back to the Frenchtown one, I'm sure that all of our listeners understand what you were referencing there in terms of degree of difficulty in Missoula County for those kinds of things. Have you gotten any hint or idea of what types of houses there will be? Will it be all kinds, or kind of a standard?
Denny, to be really honest, I didn't read the whole article, but now I will, and I'll have a better answer for you on that on Monday.
Okay. It's just one of those out of curiosity things, you know.
Well, throw me a curveball. It's okay. I can handle it. I literally, I'm a headline reader, which is probably not great all the time, but I just kind of like to see what's going on in general. And if something piques my interest, then I have to pay $2 to sign up with the Missoulian to get the rest of the information. So I'm sticking with my headlines for now, and Google. Google's very helpful.
Okay. By the next time you're on the show, you will have done all your homework on that. I'll make a note to ask about that.
That sounds good. Let's talk about all the new developments in Missoula next time I come in.
Okay, you got a deal.
All right.
We still got a few minutes left in this show, I think. Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck and Becky Peterson, the Beck and Beck team at Windermere Real Estate here on News Talk KGVO. My guest, Diane Beck. I guess I always ask you this. It doesn't matter what time of year you come in, but let's see. What do we September, October, November, December? A little over 4 months of the year left. Your outlook maybe for the remainder of the year, and I guess a little bit into 2025 if you look that far ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I'm looking towards the fall and looking at being very optimistic about the real estate market in general. More homes, more inventory, a little bit lower interest rates, hopefully, and some good opportunities for sellers and buyers. I believe that will carry on into 2025. Again, my caveat is depending on what happens with the economy, depending on what happens with the election. I mean, there's so many moving targets out there. It's just really, I can have a crystal ball, but you never know what might shake that thing up and change it. And those are the things that are beyond our control. Right. And we just have to, and people are like, well, you're always so optimistic about the real estate market. And I'm like, well, it's really a good industry to be in. And I've watched it for over 30 years, and I've been in the highs, I've been in the lows, and, I have a pretty good gut, check on the whole thing. And I talk to brokers all across the state. I'm part of the Montana Association of Realtors, so we have meetings every quarter just about, or I have people that I can call and say, hey, what's going on in Butte? What's going on in Bozeman? What's going on in Billings? And they do the same to me, because I think the more we know about what's going on across the state really can actually, and the nation, can really impact how things are going in Missoula, Montana. So, it's pretty interesting to keep your pulse on that. But I feel like the fourth quarter is going to be really, really good, and into 2025, and looking forward to riding the wave.
Well, and one of the things I've always liked about you in terms of a prospective buyer is that you are optimistic yet realistic, because it's kind of on you to make sure you manage the expectations of prospective buyers. You don't want them feeling left out because of the current price points.
Absolutely.
Here, let me, there's ways we can work with what you got. Let's go.
Yes, and you just nailed it. It's like I can be optimistic, but I have to be realistic. Sure. Because I don't want to set an expectation that they can come in and buy a $400,000 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, because that's not a realistic goal for them. If I sit down with a young family or a couple or a single person, doesn't matter, and we have a conversation, it's going to be to the point. It's going to be honest. It's not going to. I'm not going to set an expectation that I can't meet for them. And so, having those conversations up front with sellers and buyers is really critical, because that communication is key to the success of the outcome. And why would you sit back and tell somebody you can get $700,000 for a house that is only going to sell for $500,000. I mean, there's just setting that expectation up front, and same thing with the buyers is just very critical. That's how I've managed my business for over 30 years. It's just, I may be optimistic and smiley, but you're gonna get it right from the heart, and you're gonna get it from the gut. This is my objective and my perspective.
And you do it well. My guest has been Diane Beck, the sponsor of Missoula Real Estate Today, the Beck & Beck team at Windermere Real Estate. I'm always glad when you can come in. Good seeing you again.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. We'll talk development next time I come in. I'll be all prepared for you.
Thank you for listening to Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck and Becky Peterson, the Beck & Beck team at Windermere Real Estate. For current listings and services Beck & Beck provide, visit movetomissoula.com. That's Missoula.com. We'll see you next time on Missoula Real Estate Today.